Let's start with the basics. Every student learns at a different pace depending on what is being taught in the classroom that day. Unless every part of every lesson ever taught is a lecture, students will move through content at different speeds due to extremely variable factors like interest, aptitude, and even things like energy that a kid has that day at school. This means that we'll always have kids finish a lesson, notes, activity, whatever, and have a gap before the next thing in class. We'll also have students need every minute possible and possibly time at home to complete learning the essentials. Some teachers approach this by trying to have self paced progression. Think modern classroom project type structure in class. But no matter what, you're going to have times where kids are finishing things at different speeds. I think most teachers try to find a sort of middle ground with pacing. If we're pacing every day based on the kid who is fastest at math, we're all having a bad time. Thus, the idea of making learning extensions available makes it so that that math genius student doesn't just have dead time after finishing their work. I'm not at all in the camp that every single moment of every single day needs to be work, 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 busy work. Human beings need time to explore, reset, and readjust. But it's also easy for a long enough undirected pause to turn into boredom and frustration for students. When I was in college, I worked a bunch of jobs, a couple being in call centers for things like the census and insurance groups. I remember these jobs switching between me frequently staring at a computer screen, unable to browse the internet, unable to talk to neighbors, etc., for big chunks of time while I waited for a call, just kind of bored out of my mind. Or other times where calls were constant, never ending work with no breaks, and no ability to adjust the script, even if most calls ended in someone hanging up frustrated. In both scenarios, there was no opportunity or tools present to learn or grow in that job. So I hated these and most other jobs I had going through school. I love being a teacher because while we're crazy busy all the time, we have some agency in how we teach, how we grow and change in that teaching, and what we want to learn day to day as we do it. With learning extensions, we're giving tools to our students, but it's more than that. Whether they're a third grader or an 11th grader, most aren't at the point where we can give them a computer, shout, "Learn!" and walk away beaming at our own brilliance. Most kids are 100% going to go to cool math games, to fly a helicopter, or click a duck like I was doing in school in 2002 if given complete and total freedom. When looking at learning extensions, we want to encourage two things. Number one, how can we encourage extra, deeper learning? Our students are learning the essential standards in class and probably learning them well because we're all awesome. If they finish early or ahead of others, though, can we leave them some opportunities to learn those standards at a deeper level? Think DOK4 type stuff. And number two, how can we encourage students to explore those standards we have less time to explore as part of regular content? The nice to know or I wish I had time to cover these more in depth support standards. As a bonus, can we do both of these in a way that supports students in skills that will help them out in the future? Can we incorporate things like useful technology skills, things like teamwork, etc., to help them grow along with learning the content? Let's talk about framing our learning extensions. How can we make them appealing? How can we make it so that our students want to complete them? We know that it's not enough to just shout out intrinsic motivation and walk off into the sunset. Teachers battle the specter of short form videos disintegrating attention spans every day. Ask any of your students and they'll agree that their brain is being fried by the algorithm. It's also not fair to decry the next generation as irreparably ruined because Johnny wasn't interested in doing the extra worksheet. I worked so hard to print from Teachers Pay Teachers. Any learning extension built for students must do one or more of these three things. Ideally, learning extensions provide fun, they provide utility, and they provide reward of some type. I'll explain what I mean on those. With providing fun, ask yourself, does this learning extension engage my students in some way? I love to use games to do that with students, things like competition to build fun into what they're doing. Even just novelty can add an element of fun for students, something learned differently. That could be something as simple as working in small groups. Just think about the fact that it has some fun element. With providing utility, what I mean by that is that students are people. When I learn something, A lot of the times it's just for the joy of learning. It's a topic I'm genuinely interested in. But there are things that we as humans learn because we know it'll benefit us in some way. If I can make learning extensions that students know will benefit them in some way in the future, they're more likely to be interested enough to actually do that extension. It's easy for me to get a lot of my students interested in learning extensions because so many of them are involved with things like academic team, math counts, beta, other competitive academic spaces. We're obviously not just trying to get those kids interested in learning extensions, though. One way that I like to point it out is connecting it through careers, college, the future. I love when we have career day at the middle school or when we have guest speakers come in and talk about their job because they do this so well. They point out how these various things that students are learning or these tools that students are using are legitimately applicable in their jobs. It's really nice to be able to point out so many people in so many different job spaces using tools like Canva for their work, creating flyers, creating brochures, creating infographics, logos, etc. And it extends to college too. So if we can connect the tool with the content, we have a win in a couple different ways, and that helps provide some interest for students. A third tool to interest our students in learning extensions is just providing some type of reward. And I don't just mean like a piece of candy, though, yeah, give students some candy if they complete an extension if that works for your kids. I mean rewards that show progress in some way. I use a very video game style progression leveling system for a class I teach. Some kids care about it, love it, super into it. Others don't care at all, but they're all used to gamified progression. Think of your Fitbit giving a little fireworks show when you hit 10,000 steps at the end of the day. Apps like Duolingo utilizing things like badges and learning streak goals. Xbox started adding achievements in their system in games all the way back in 2005 to push people playing video games to play longer and complete more in the games that they bought. And now everyone gamifies progression in some way. Little ways to do this in class can boost how many want to complete these learning extensions you've taken the time to make. I'm using a badge-like achievement system this year for students that complete big projects, but you don't have to create a whole new system. Your student's probably going to be interested in the learning due to some intrinsic motivation anyway. All it takes is that little spark of something like a bonus point, or maybe you emailing home and congratulating a student for completing and going above and beyond doing something cool that spurs them to do more of that in the future. Just little things so students know that someone is paying attention to what they're doing. Again, not all students need these three things to want to hop into a learning extension, but our goal isn't just to hit the students bubbling with intrinsic motivation every day. It's not just the highest performing kids that we want to continue to extend their learning. Learning extensions should be open to every student in your class. Note it that even a student that needs intervention needs access to extensions. That's a mouthful. So an example is that I work with plenty of gifted kids that absolutely rock it every day at math, but struggle in reading or vice versa. If I'm shaking my head and handing them a novel every time they're ahead in math, their growth in math is going to stagnate and they're going to hate reading even more. If I can give them ways to continue to grow in math, that's going to build their confidence in that subject so that when they need the interventions in reading, hopefully they can continue to build on it too. So elephant in the room, we're all extremely busy in our job. Expectations for educators aren't getting any lighter, and there's no argument that focusing on the essentials is vastly more beneficial to the greatest number of students. If I'm a new teacher drowning in learning 500 new acronyms, or someone tackling new curriculum, I'm going to be even more pressed for time. When planning learning extensions, ask yourself, can I set it and forget it? Can I post this on day one of a quarter or day one of a unit and not need to revisit it until a specific endpoint? If I'm needing to check in with students daily or monitor something online constantly, this learning extension is probably too much for me to handle. I just don't have time to monitor it. And number two, can I find something already made? We don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of us teachers out there, and luckily there's a lot of us who are posting and putting things that we can use as learning extensions to help build content knowledge. Find what other educators have freely shared and benefit from their efforts. Here's some tools to start with that I use to help manage time as far as putting learning extensions out there for my kids. Genially was my new favorite website last year. Its versatility is incredible. It's framed like Google Slides, so learning it is simple, Almost no features are locked behind a subscription, and I and my students both genuinely enjoyed creating on it. I mostly ditched Google Classroom in favor of using it for a sort of game-like hub where I post our work and links with puzzles and extra challenges inside, but it absolutely doesn't have to get that complicated. Have you ever seen those escape room games that teachers make? They're really, really cool, but ask someone who's made one of those in the past and they'll tell you they take a lot of planning time. Genially nearly removes all that planning time. They have a bunch of pre-built templates with puzzles and gameplay already embedded. All you usually have to do is put in the content. If you want to make a microsite and publish it, Genially is great for that, just like Google Sites, but with some more versatility and added flash to it. Infographics, timelines, and even just awesome presentations are great on here. But again, you don't have to be the creator. Empower your student to be the creator, and that's going to be their learning extension. Post something like a rubric you've created using a prompt like this with AI, or reuse an old rubric you have. Tweak it so it makes sense for your class and the extension you want students to do. Post it on Google Classroom at the start of a quarter, and suddenly you have a project that your students can access anytime. Make it due in a month at the end of the unit, and note some sort of reward. And when a student finishes their work early, point them back to Google Classroom where you've posted this potential project they can do. Everything I mentioned about Genially applies to Canva too. Canva is incredibly versatile. Our students are using it every day for classes and building skills on there. There's a ton of great learning resources on it that could be used as extensions in themselves. Don't forget that Kentucky has technology standards that all our students benefit from if we can hit those in different ways. And suddenly your students are creating an advertisement using the advertising techniques that they studied in social studies. Or maybe they're making a storybook animation to illustrate a story or short story that they read in class. I have to highlight the quiz sites like Blooket. Blooket took what the nearly ubiquitous Kahoot was doing and gamified absolutely everything about quiz questions. Quiz game modes are copied from popular video games, and long-term progression is added to the back end so that your students want to keep playing. Even college students are finding success with websites like this. The idea of tiny brain breaks between questions and the fun of gameplay to keep you hooked and away from scrolling on a cell phone works to prepare for even high-level content. Thousands of quizzes are pre-built by teachers in these too. You just have to type in topics. Pick the best one that fits your kids and extending learning, and you've got a place to start. You can do it a couple ways. Just post a solo link where kids can pick the game, or you can even set a homework challenge where you pop in later and see which students have completed it. If given unfettered access to these, kids will absolutely go on it and click quiz games about Disney characters or just clicking the word yes endlessly. I and most teachers I talk to avoid this problem with clear expectations for students using only the games we link. GoGuardian, use it to block access to it on days where I don't want anybody to touch it, and you're good to go. Gimkit is very similar to Blooket. The games are a little more complex and a nice change of pace. But let's say you want to go deeper with these quiz games. Have students create their own. Have them create a quiz to challenge their peers with specific parameters you set, or ask them to synthesize their notes that they took for the main part of learning in class into a quiz game that they think would help prepare students for an upcoming test. Wayground, the website formerly known as Quizzes, is absolutely crazy. I'll be quick because it's the most expensive on here, but if you really dig into it, it's probably the one you're most going to want to get a subscription for. It was known for just quiz games, but has really expanded. If you've used something like Edpuzzle before for self-paced videos, it can do that. If you like synchronous or asynchronous Nearpod style slideshow lessons, it's got that too. Have the whole class follow along while you give questions and present, or create your content, pick from a huge library, and set it as a learning extension that kids can access later. If you've used tools like Pair Assessment to make questions more state assessment-like, it has that too, and will do it automatically with AI tools, which is a huge headache that I absolutely love avoiding. Next, we're going to look at some examples of learning extensions that I've used with kids in class.